Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Recently, the National Transportation Safety Board issued a safety alert regarding the dangers of marijuana for teenage drivers, and the incident that prompted that alert was a collision caused by a teen driver and involving a large truck. I'll talk with Dr. Robert Malloy, the Director of the Office of Highway Safety at the NTSB. The U.S. DOT is leaning into something called Vehicle-to-Everything, or V2X, technology. So what the heck is that? Tyson Fisher and Mark Schirmer of Landline Magazine join R. Scott Thompson to explain before delving into other headlines of the week. And finally, Marty Ellis is hearing about a number of issues from truckers, and high up on the list is a decline in the number of tradesmen for vital jobs, including diesel mechanics. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today: the California Trucking Association is dropping its case against the state's worker classification law known as AB 5. In a statement, CTA CEO Eric Sauer said after litigating Assembly Bill 5 for 4.5 years, the association has decided not to pursue further appeals. But the issue isn't over. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association will continue with its appeal. OOIDA President Todd Spencer said the association has opposed California's efforts to destroy the owner-operator model since 2019, and they won't stop now. The AB 5 rule has been bouncing around the court system. This past March, a district court ruled in favor of the state. In April, OOIDA and the California Trucking Association filed their notices of appeal. As part of that appeal, OOIDA said in its opening brief that interstate truckers are being singled out. The state and the Teamsters have until September 4th to file a response. Meanwhile, in a separate push against another controversial rule in the Golden State, a coalition of Republican state lawmakers is urging Governor Gavin Newsom to hit pause on the state's Advanced Clean Fleets rule. The letter comes after two recent fiery truck crashes involving electric semis. In both cases, first responders struggled to contain the intense fires caused by burning lithium-ion batteries, reigniting concerns about the safety of the batteries. In their letter to the governor, the group of GOP state lawmakers argues that the two recent crashes suggest the state is not prepared to deal with the unintended consequences of the Advanced Clean Fleets rule, which requires that 100% of manufacturers' sales be zero tailpipe emission trucks by 2036. The rule currently only applies to drayage operations, government fleets, and high-priority fleets with 50 or more vehicles. It went into effect in January. However, it's not being enforced. That's because the state has yet to receive the approval it needs from the federal government. The U.S. DOT has taken notice of the concerns that are out there regarding lithium-ion batteries. On Tuesday, August 27th, they're hosting a public meeting labeled the Battery Safety Post-Incident Stakeholder Meeting. Experts from a variety of fields are scheduled to talk about battery safety, EV standards, and the ways in which emergency management services are dealing with lithium-ion battery fires on the nation's roadways. About 16 hours after it began, a work stoppage at two of Canada's biggest railways came to an end. Or more specifically, it was forced to end. The Canadian government stepping in Thursday night, forcing an end to the shutdown and ordering arbitration. It was a change of heart for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration. They had previously refused to mediate the labor dispute between Canadian National and Canadian Pacific Kansas City on one side and union workers on the other. But with supply chain disruptions feared on both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border, Canada's Labour Ministry stepped off the sidelines and into the conversation. Here's Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon explaining the decision during a news conference.
After months of negotiations, CN Rail and CPKC began lockouts while Teamsters Canada rail workers at CPKC went on strike at 12:01 a.m. this morning. These collective bargaining negotiations belong to these parties, but their effects and the impacts of the current impasse are being borne by all Canadians. And there is an impasse. As Minister of Labour, I am using my authorities under the Canada Labour Code to secure industrial peace and deliver the short and long-term solutions that are in the national interest.
In the short term, that means the railroads and its thousands of union members go back to work. It's a setback, though, for the Teamsters. In a statement, the union said it was deeply disappointed with the decision and is currently consulting with attorneys on next steps. The number of trailers being ordered in the U.S. last month rebounded, but is still down considerably compared to a year ago. ACT Research says 7,200 trailers were ordered in July, up 14% from a month earlier, but 37% lower than July of last year. Jennifer McNeely, Director of Commercial Vehicle Market Research for ACT, said there were no surprises with the July data. She said we're not only in the weakest months of the annual cycle, but that weaker demand is to be expected considering how many orders have been placed in the past few years. Another person has been indicted in connection with a 2022 incident in San Antonio that left 53 migrants dead. Rigoberto Roman Miranda Orozco, a Guatemala national, was indicted on Thursday on 6 counts of smuggling migrants, resulting in death. Federal officials said Guatemalan police arrested him and 6 others in the case. Here's Nicole Argenteri, head of the criminal division at the Department of Justice, explaining the charges.
According to the indictment unsealed yesterday, Miranda Orozco participated in a human smuggling organization that allegedly used trucks and stash houses to move migrants from Guatemala to Mexico and then across the United States-Mexico border. In the weeks leading up to the June 2022 operation, Miranda Orozco secured payments from migrants who were citizens of Guatemala and then worked with his co-conspirators to smuggle and transport the migrants north from Guatemala. As the indictment lays out, on June 27, 2022, 65 individuals who had made arrangements with the smuggling organization, including children and a pregnant woman, were loaded into a tractor trailer to be transported. According to the indictment, the trailer's air conditioning was not working properly as it drove north on a Texas interstate. As temperatures rose, some of the migrants inside the trailer allegedly lost consciousness, while others clawed at the walls, trying to escape. By the time the tractor trailer reached San Antonio, the indictment alleges that 48 migrants had already died, and another 5 migrants died after being transported to local hospitals. Among those that died were 6 children and a pregnant woman.
More than a dozen people have now been arrested in connection to the 2022 smuggling incident. Miranda Orozco faces extradition to the U.S. The others arrested in Guatemala will be tried there. The oil service company Halliburton was a victim of a cyber attack this week. In a securities filing about the breach, Halliburton said it first became aware of the attack on Wednesday. Few other details have been released about the attack or its extent. Halliburton said it's still trying to figure out what impact the incident will have, but the Department of Energy said Thursday it hasn't had any effect, yet at least, on energy services. And finally, if you like to play the lottery and are in the Northeast anytime soon, you might want to make a stop in Nantucket. The Massachusetts State Lottery says $3 million scratch-off tickets have been sold at the same store in the past 5 months. Old South Diner and Market is the place to be. They sold the first big winner in March. That was for $1 million. Then someone bought an instant ticket in June and won $2 million. Then most recently, someone hit it big with a $1 million scratch-off ticket. Old South Diner is located on 57 Old South Road, and even if you don't win the big prize, you can enjoy a variety of Chinese food dishes there and check out the convenience store. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. A quick correction. In our coverage yesterday of the electric truck fire in California, we incorrectly identified the make of the truck involved. The fire involved a Tesla semi. Starting Sunday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at GC's in Toledo, Washington. That's located at Exit 57 off Interstate 5. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss a warning about marijuana and teen drivers with Dr. Robert Malloy, the director of the Office of Highway Safety at the National Transportation Safety Board. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Truckdown verified, vendor qualified. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. Recently, the National Transportation Safety Board issued a safety alert regarding the dangers of marijuana for teenage drivers. And the incident that prompted that alert was a collision caused by a teen driver and involving a large truck. I wanted to learn more about the alert and the issue overall, so I called Dr. Robert Malloy, the director of the Office of Highway Safety at the NTSB. The National Transportation Safety Board issued a safety alert regarding marijuana and teen drivers, and it was accompanied by a final report on a crash involving a large truck and a passenger vehicle with 6 teens inside. What can you tell us about this accident, first of all?
Well, we looked at this crash. When we were looking at this crash, we learned that the crash involved, as you said, a teenager who was driving a Chevy Spark and had gone out to lunch with 5 of her friends. As they were coming back from lunch, she was at an intersection in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, and as she approached a stop sign, she just had a car in front of her, so she slowed down. But as that car pulled out through into the intersection, she followed it and accelerated through a stop sign, and unfortunately there was a truck approaching, tractor trailer, and she had pulled out in front of the tractor trailer. The truck operator did his best to stop his vehicle, responded very quickly, but still was a collision that resulted in all 6 girls dying. We determined that the cause of the wreck, was the teen driver's acceleration through the intersection after briefly slowing without stopping due to a distraction from having 5 other teens in the car, her limited driving experience, and likely impairment from marijuana.
Okay, and that of course is the big issue here and the subject of the NTSB alert was the marijuana use. How much more frequent has this type of problem become in the wake of so many states legalizing either medical or recreational use of marijuana?
So we've seen an increase in number of crashes in states that have allowed for the legalization. 6% increase in the total number of crashes, 4% increase in fatal crashes. So we are seeing an effect on safety on our roadways.
And what essentially do you think is behind that? I mean, obviously marijuana use and impairment, but I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are listening and thinking, well, I'm not that bad when I smoke marijuana. And although that may seem obvious to other people, the problem with that statement, can you go ahead and explain it in layman's terms?
Well, certainly, Mark, and you're onto something there. First off, we know that marijuana will affect drivers' performance, that it will, impair your judgment, increase your reaction time, have more difficulty controlling the car. So those are things that we know will happen. Unfortunately, there's a disconnect between what we know will happen and what people think will happen based upon their own experience. And that's particularly something that we think is a problem with teens, that they may know, something like alcohol will impair driving. And the vast majority of kids, when surveyed, will say, alcohol is dangerous to use while driving. But that drops substantially when you ask about marijuana. So there's this perception that it's not impairing despite the fact that it is impairing. Well, and another aspect of that, too, is that a number of teens will think that if it is legal to use in the state, it's legal to drive. 33% of kids, when surveyed, thought that if it was legal in the state, they could use it to drive while driving.
And, of course, that is not the case, is it?
No. No state where it's legal to use marijuana, either for medical or recreational? Is it legal to drive impaired by marijuana?
So the DEA is currently considering whether to change marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3 drug, and that's making a lot of news out there. First, can you explain the difference between Schedule 1 and Schedule 3? What does that mean?
So when you think about the difference between Schedule 1 and Schedule 3, scheduling is something that the DEA does with regard to drugs that may be something that people may abuse. And the more likely it is to be abused would be Schedule 1, as that risk of abuse and chance of being kind of hooked on the drug, that risk for abuse gets less, schedule number goes higher. So it would basically be moving from a Schedule 1, which is a drug that has really no medical approved purpose and is highly at risk for abuse, to something considered less risky with regard to abuse and may have a medical purpose that's recognized. And that's concerning for us, particularly with regard to testing for impairing substances, that Schedule 1 substances are required to be tested for in DOT tests. But if this change to the schedule happens, we have concerns that might have unintended consequences with regard to testing of safety-sensitive personnel like truckers, drivers, with regard to testing them for impairing substances.
Just because we've had this confusion on the part of some people in the public, with states having legalized it to some extent or another, I just want to clarify, if that change is to take place from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, would the legality of driving while taking marijuana change, or would anything about driving and the use of marijuana change?
So the drug itself, marijuana, will still be impairing with regard to your driving. It will still be illegal to drive impaired by marijuana, regardless of the scheduling. And so, there wouldn't be an effect as far as your ability to legally drive with it.
What are some of the specific problems that you can tell us about that are linked to drivers being under the influence of marijuana? You mentioned some of them earlier, but I'm wondering if you can go a little bit deeper on that topic.
The research has found that people will, have difficulty with their reaction times. So they may be slower to respond to a changing condition on the roadway. They may make poor decisions because they've used marijuana. We know that they'll have kind of control or speed issues while controlling the vehicle resulting from that impairment.
To what extent is the problem made worse by the lack of a roadside test for marijuana impairment, similar to a breathalyzer for alcohol impairment?
Well, I think one of the biggest aspects of it is that we don't really know the full impact of marijuana on driving, is because of that lack of an easy test that's able to be done roadside. And some of the things that we've addressed with regard to some research we did looking at the effects of multiple drugs on driving performance was the idea that in many cases when you find someone's impaired with alcohol, you stop testing. So when we were looking at test results from, I think, 6 different states, we found that the number one impairing substance use was alcohol, but closely behind was marijuana, and we were finding that 1 in 3 drivers were impaired by marijuana that were tested.
How do you test for marijuana with the lack of that roadside test? I mean, what do people have to go through at this point in the enforcement community in order to show impairment for marijuana?
I think right off the bat, that people can be tested for marijuana impairment. We have made recommendations that states use oral testing to detect for marijuana use and impairment. But there's also drug recognition experts that can identify the signs of marijuana impairment. So there are ways of detecting someone's impaired by marijuana. Many states also have a zero tolerance for marijuana in your system. So if you have any level in your system, you will be assumed to be impaired. So what we're trying to do is get more states to be using the roadside oral testing, but also more states to we made a recommendation to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to work with states to ensure that their drug labs are meeting the current standards with regard to marijuana testing.
Now, that's interesting. I had not heard of the oral test before. At this point, how accurate is that test at roadside? Because we know that some of the tests that are used in other contexts, marijuana can last in the system or show up in your system well past the point of impairment, sometimes even days afterwards. How accurate is the oral testing?
I can't go, into the details on exactly how accurate they are. I know that is something that we've recommended the states use, that they can detect. One of the difficulties is, unlike with alcohol, we don't have that same level of a real good understanding of the amount of alcohol in your system, like with a blood alcohol content. It's not the same with marijuana. I know it can detect, and I think that's the first step we need to do is to be detecting that people are in crashes with the substance in them so that we can begin to get a handle on how big and widespread this problem is, and then take actions to reduce that.
Okay. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board chose in this instance to focus on teen drivers in the notice it put out. Is the problem worse in that group as compared with other segments of the driving population?
One of the reasons we focused on the teen drivers is the fact that, one, they're the group that we saw with the largest misperception with regard to the effects of it on your driving, that parents, when they surveyed, had a more realistic understanding of the impairments associated with marijuana, still thought it was safer than alcohol, even though it is not. But so that's one, their perception of the safety of driving under the influence of marijuana. The other aspect is, teen drivers are new at this. They don't have a lot of experience. And so anything that's going to affect their ability to drive negatively will just be a kind of compounding factor. It will make the fact that they're inexperienced that much worse. So that's a particular concern we have, is that they're inexperienced. They have a perception that it's safe to drive with it in your system. So that's why we target it.
Okay. That's all I have, sir. Is there anything else that you want to add or that you think is important for people to know about the topic?
Well, I think one of the things that we want to make sure people know is that when we're talking about cannabis, we recognize that there are things happening across the country with regard to the legality, both for medical and for recreational purposes. But the one thing we want to be clear, and the evidence is clear, is that using cannabis in driving is unsafe, and that will increase the risks for yourself and those around you. So the two don't mix.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. I sure appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and you have a great day, Mark.
That was Dr. Robert Malloy, the director of the Office of Highway Safety at the National Transportation Safety Board, talking about a safety alert issued by the agency regarding the dangers of marijuana use by teen drivers. It's worth noting that the National Transportation Safety Board does not have the ability to issue regulations. The agency's mission is to investigate crashes not only on highways, but also in aviation, in ships, in railroads, and pipelines. It does make recommendations to other agencies for possible regulations or other actions based on those investigations. You can learn more at their website, ntsb.gov. Again, that website is ntsb.gov. You can find that link at our website, landlinenow.com. Just click on the headline or photo at the top of the page. That's where you'll find all the website links, email addresses, and phone numbers that we mention on the program. Again, that's at our website, landlinenow.com. And a quick reminder, no matter what your state laws say, the use of marijuana by truck drivers is strictly prohibited by federal regulations, and the issues come up quite a bit since so many states have legalized it. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Landline now, welcome back. Let's wrap the week up with a recap of the biggest stories from trucking over the past few days, from V2X and whatever that is, and computer-related imports to a number of bills of interest to truckers. We've got Tyson Fisher and Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine joining us with all the details and a little analysis sprinkled in. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
I'm doing all right.
Thanks for being here. That's good. That's better than bad, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to start with the USDOT's plan to roll out something called Vehicle to Everything, or V2X technology. They're looking to do this nationwide.
Yep.
I reported on this earlier in the week, but I think it's worth going over again because it is a foreign concept, Tyson.
Sure.
And you get the assignment of explaining what the heck
Right.
V2X is.
So, first of all, what it isn't. Vehicle to everything technology is not autonomous or self-driving technology. So, although autonomous vehicle technology will absolutely use vehicle to everything tech, that will be the case, but V to everything technology is not autonomous technology. So with that said, what it is, it's basically the communication between vehicles, infrastructure, and people. So vehicles sending information to other vehicles, vehicles receiving info from traffic signals, just the entire transportation system just communicating with one another is basically what it is. So an example, and I think you even mentioned this in the newscast before, which is Volvo actually has a vehicle-to-vehicle technology, which is where they can let other nearby Volvos know about a slippery road. The thing is, they can only communicate with other Volvos, not other manufacturers. And so what vehicle to everything is that everyone is connected. So a Volvo will connect to, a BMW or, a Ford or whatever. So that's kind of the idea here. And that also includes like the traffic signals. So we can communicate with the signals. It's just this one big connected thing, ecosystem that we would have with transportation.
Yeah. And then with the USDOT, obviously, they're pursuing this for a number of reasons. I think, number one, safety, that this has the potential for making roadways safer because you've got everything communicating with each other and they can, slow things down if they need to or do this or that. It sounds cool.
Sure, but
I don't... just from my perspective, I mean, it sounds cool, and I think the potential there is great. I just don't know. I mean, it feels like we're a ways off from this.
So the question is, so what's the DOT doing here, and why are they doing it? So this is going, and the way that I phrase it is, there's a lot of cooks in this kitchen. So this is going to involve massive collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. So you got tech companies, we have auto manufacturers, you got the DOT, you got the Federal Communications Commission, you got all these people trying to do the same thing. And so what the DOT did with this vehicle to everything deployment plan, which is they're basically acting as the project manager of this entire operation. And so that's basically what it is. So what they'll do is that they're trying to put together certain goals and a timeline to meet these goals. And, as you mentioned, it is a safety issue for sure. I think it will absolutely increase highway safety, but it also will save motorists time and money. So kind of think of your navigation apps that we use. So navigation apps, the way that those work is that it just uses data from the users of that app. Well, if the entire U.S. fleet is connected to the same program, essentially, we would have better data to have more accurate traffic maps. And so it's kind of why the DOT is getting involved. But yeah, so there's a lot of stakeholders involved with this. And so this is just a way to kind of just rally everyone up saying, all right, here's the plan. Here's some target dates, and here's what the DOT and the federal government in general is going to do to facilitate the deployment of all these different technologies and whatnot that we have here.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess as you kind of explained there, a lot of these technologies are already being utilized by us individually.
Sure.
It's about connecting all of them, which also sets my spidey senses off about if we're connecting everything, that makes it a lot easier for, hackers, bad actors to get in and cause havoc. And I know that's a concern that they have as well.
There are many concerns here. And those you hit the main one.
Yeah.
So national security concerns are big ones. As a matter of fact, earlier this year, the Department of Commerce kind of hit on this issue. So it issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, which is basically seeking information about security of connected vehicles, which is exactly what this is. So basically what the federal government is trying to do is that they're looking to draft regulation that would protect vehicles from technologies that have ties to foreign adversaries, namely China, but that would also include Russia, North Korea, Iran, to name a few. So, a lot of vehicles and vehicle technology, they're made in China. They're made by Chinese companies. And so the question is, how much government control could China have over the U.S. fleet, for example, through these technologies? What data and how much of that data is China collecting? But then the thing is, you can take those same privacy concerns and extend them to private companies in the U.S. and the U.S. government. How much do we want the U.S. government to know where we are and where we're going, when we're going?
What we're doing,
Yeah, so it kind of it's that slippery slope on privacy issues there. And then we've got cybersecurity. We've talked about the hack of the ELD. How someone just drove by a truck at highway speeds and in seconds hacked into an ELD. Well, this is similar technology. This is connected vehicle technology. So we can extend those same concerns to connected vehicle technology as well.
Yeah, I think there was a Die Hard sequel that kind of was based on this idea. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the big thing you look at here, and what I always have kind of concern is, obviously, I think technology can help safety. I think if you're using it in the right ways. But I feel like at the same time, it seems like we're not wanting to fix the problems with drivers and some of the things that are going on.
They've given up.
I basically said that, Federal Highway Administrator during the press conference, I was listening to some of it, and he even referenced, basically said that drivers have proven to be distracted, drowsy, drunk, drugged, and dumb.
All the D's.
Yeah. So he put out all 5 of those, saying basically his reason that they need to use technology. Now, he was talking about drivers in general. He wasn't talking about specifically truck drivers. But I always relate this back to OOIDA has been preaching for years. We need to increase driver training, entry-level driver training standards, and instead it seems like the focus from the government constantly is let's just put all these gadgets on the truck and not worry about actually having a trained driver. And there's no better way to improve safety than having better drivers behind the wheel, and also from the passenger vehicle standpoint, getting them to understand how to drive around big trucks. And that's a huge gap.
We humans, we've had a good run, right? I mean, I think it's time. I don't know. Let's turn to more traditional things here. Let's talk about legislation in Congress that has possible implications for truckers. We've seen some movement, Mark, on 3 bills, I believe, in recent days.
Yeah.
More support for these bills, and it's a long slog, but we're getting there maybe.
Yeah, these 3 bills that I'll mention, they're all ones that are supported by OOIDA. These ones would be generally good for truckers. The one thing I want to say before go into them specifically is how difficult it is. While it's definitely optimistic to see that support is increasing, getting any standalone like transportation bill in on its own. It's just a difficult hurdle. But these, when you see the support increasing, I think it gives you the idea of knowing these are the type of things that might, once the next there's a big highway bill package, these are the things that could be put into namely the Tax Fairness for Workers Act. Basically what it would do is, I think back in 22, there was, they basically removed the per diem for company truck drivers, weren't able to put that in, and now this would add that back. That would be a huge benefit to company drivers. And this one is when you talk about a standalone bill being optimistic, a lot of times these co-sponsors, are in 10, 15, 20. This is already up in the House 192, and we've just had, I think, about 4 or 5 in recent weeks here that have been added. So that's, and then there's also a companion bill in the Senate. 40 senators have signed on as co-sponsors. So there's a lot of support for that one in particular.
Yeah, and bipartisan, we should mention too.
Yeah.
We've got a couple others real quick we can mention here. The Prove It Act, we've had its sponsor, Brad Finstad, Representative Finstad, on the program to talk about that. That would essentially force federal agencies to prove it, to show how a regulation would affect.
Yeah, and specifically for small business, and obviously, as we've talked about, when you talk about small business, trucking is a huge part of that. While this would be encompassing a lot of different industries, a far majority of trucking businesses are small businesses, and you talk to any trucker, they'll tell you there's way too many regulations. So this is the type of bill that most truckers would support. And then another one that we've, this is, and we've Representative Nails, who introduced this in the House, the Trucker Bathroom Access Act. This should have been such a slam dunk. Basically, there's no cost to it. There's all it is that if you already have a restroom and you're a shipper or receiver and the truck driver that's delivering to you needs to use the restroom, you let him use it. That
novel concept.
That doesn't seem like that should be that difficult, but for whatever reason, that's taken a long way. But I think we're up to 10 co-sponsors now. Again, another bipartisan effort, which is nice, but this should have already been signed long ago, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Tyson, a thing or two about this with the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, we won't get you started because we don't have enough time to get you started. But I'll pivot here to talk about one more item quickly here before we go.
Sure.
Cross-border numbers for June, as you have pointed out before, not the most exciting or sexiest topic necessarily, but something did stand out to you this time.
Yeah, as you pointed out, not the biggest topic ever. But, I've noticed that there has been a trend lately, and that trend is the southern border is pretty hot as far as imports go. And so overall, freight hauled across the borders in June went down, but that's mostly because Canadian freight took a hit. But the southern border continues to grow, particularly, and this is the pattern that I found, computer-related imports from Mexico is massive right now. As a matter of fact, it's been trending upwards since January, and in June alone, computer-related freight increased 25% year over year, and that has been the trend. Motive, which is a logistics tech company, they came out with reports saying that Mexico is the biggest U.S. importer. And they mentioned that computer-related parts are a big part of that. And they made a pretty good point, which is as U.S. companies continue to invest in AI technology, computer-related parts are just going to continue to grow for the foreseeable future. So I'm not an economist or a logistics expert, but I say good money might be on computer-related freight coming out of Mexico.
Well, especially with the concerns about China and AI technology and cybersecurity and national security concerns there as well. So that may be an alternative that we'll keep an eye on. Fightingfortruckers.com, I should mention that, for that legislation we're talking
100%.
about. Get your lawmakers on board. Tyson, Mark, we appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Our thanks to Mark Schrimmer and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine for their time. We'll be back in just a moment.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to Prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Marty is between truck shows right now, with one out of the way and more down the line. Meanwhile, he's got a line on some hot topics among truckers who visited. And high up on the list is something you can read about in many other places: a decline in the number of tradesmen for vital jobs, including diesel mechanics.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Where are we finding you on this fine day?
We're over at the Petro in Spokane, Washington. We'll be here through the 23rd. That's at exit 272 off of I-90. It has an iron skillet, a Starbucks, and the kitchen meals, and it has 200 parking spots. We'll be here having a good time. Hopefully we can see some of our members out here and have a good chat about what's happening in their trucking world.
Yeah, and I guess you just got through with yet another wonderful trucking show.
Yeah, absolutely. We were at the Great Salt Lake Truck Show there in Lehi, Utah. They raised money for the National Kidney Foundation of Utah and Idaho. And yeah, it was a good time. We got to see several members, and one of our board members, Doug Smith, was out there, and he was able to spend a little bit of time with me in the trailer, so that's always a great time. And they had, I'm just going to guess, about 150 trucks, really some nice-looking rigs, and just a great family atmosphere over there.
Wonderful. That sounds like a good time.
It really was.
Let's talk about some of the issues that are happening right now. And one of them that you brought up in an email you sent earlier, this is pretty interesting to me, guys. I've read quite a bit about this, and that is kind of a shortage we're seeing kind of develop in terms of tradesmen. And explain what it is that you're hearing about this, Marty.
Yeah, I read a study there that it shows that for every 5 tradesmen that retire, they're only being replaced by 2. And we kind of knew that there's been a shortage of diesel mechanics, diesel techs all across the country. And that kind of really spells out why. And I think too many people look down upon some of the trades. But boy, they are the most important people out here, because if you don't have people doing those, type of things, like whether it's an electrician or a plumber or a diesel mechanic or a car mechanic, we can find ourselves in some big trouble. And that's with talking to some of our members and that, it's not only the cost of getting things repaired, but it's actually getting into a shop that have the mechanics there that are able and willing to do the work is half of the battle. And I've heard of guys have to wait 3 months to get their engine rebuilt. Well, for a one truck owner operator, it's just so hard to be able to recover from that. And so part of it is parts, of course. We're still having an issue there. I think it is getting better for the parts availability. But right now, I think the biggest thing is the shortage of the technicians, of the mechanics. And I think we could focus a lot more on that instead of keeping on pounding the desk saying, oh, there's a driver shortage. Right now, I really believe the mechanic shortage is a lot worse than any driver shortage could ever be. And of course, we don't believe there's a driver shortage anyway.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because you're talking about two different things. What we're talking about in trucking is turnover. These are people very often in the prime of their life that come in, they kind of get tossed around and treated badly for 3 months, and they get the heck out. Whereas you're talking about something where there is a mass retirement for, as you said, every 5 that retire, only 2 replace them. And that's a retirement problem. Admittedly, there are some truckers retiring, but that's not what's driving the conditions in trucking. It's turnover. So a very, very different effect, but certainly one that's of high concern to people out there because, and not just in terms of diesel mechanics, but I would think also there's all kinds of tradesmen that we depend on for the rest of our life outside of that truck. So
absolutely. Yep.
Well, let's move on to another topic here. We got a few minutes left, and apparently we've got a carrier having a little bit of a problem with H-2B visas. What's going on there, Marty?
Yeah, I read a story where they got this company got denied their request for H-2B visas for drivers that they wanted to bring over. And the interesting thing that I saw on there was the reasoning behind asking for the visas, and that the main reason was to expand this company's fleet. And I look at that and think to myself, if you aren't being able to or willing to compete against all the other companies out there for pay, for benefits, to attract drivers to your company, I don't think that the government should be giving out H-2B visas when there's really not a need for those drivers in the United States at this point. Right now, we have plenty of trucks out there, more than the market can handle. Same thing with drivers right now. And there was a couple of years ago, that was just the opposite. But right now, that company to me reminds me of what we were just talking about, the companies not treating their drivers well. Well, that's kind of a prime example of a company that is not willing to compete with every other company out there, and they're wanting the government to help them out by getting the H-2B visas to them.
Yeah, and obviously we're not going to say which company we're talking about here, and in fact, I don't know which company you're talking about there, but as a general principle, if you're not paying enough to attract American workers, the solution isn't to hire people from overseas. The solution is pay people more.
Right. Pay them what they're worth. Here in the United States, there for a while, people say, well, Americans don't want this job. Well, sure they do. They just want to have a fair wage, make money enough to pay their bills and get ahead a little bit. Just because you can pay your bills doesn't mean you're getting ahead. And I think that these companies have to realize that these drivers need to be treated not only with respect, but also paid well for what they do.
Absolutely. Well, we're down to the last minute or so here, Marty. So why don't you tell us where you're headed to next?
Our next stop will be GC's truck stop in Toledo, Washington, and that'll be the 25th and 26th of August. They are exit 57 off of I-5, and they have a restaurant, a deli, and they do have a truck shop there. And it is another one of those mom and pops, as I call them, but it is family owned and operated, and they do a good job there, plenty of parking. So if you're anywhere in the area, stop in and check them out. They have a great restaurant, and you won't go wrong with them.
Sounds wonderful. Wish I could go with you, Marty. Well, we're down to just the last few seconds here. Is there any final words you want to give people before you head off into the sunset?
Hey, guys, just be kind to one another and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind,
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at our website, landlinenow.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy when you're trucker on a CAT scale.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.